Hello, and welcome to the Anarchist Experience. I'm your host. My name is Robert Kruger. I have a guest with me today. He's been on the show before. His name is Brent Lengel. Brent is an anarcho-communist, as far as I understand, and we don't exactly see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we certainly have had a lot of things that we share in common as well, and some of those are coming from the psychological side of things, where interpersonal communication, where the type of people that we meet, the way in which our perspective interacts with the rest of the real world, in those normal people out there that believe in having a state and having it run things for us, where we kind of bump heads with them and it changes the way that we live our lives. So welcome to the show, Brent. Good to have you.
Yeah, very, very happy to be here.
Great. Well, not long back, we started having a conversation about, some things that were going on in each of our lives, and we started to notice some similarities, and I made some recommendations to you about how to deal with what.
I didn't catch that, but I think. Mm-hmm.
It was depression that it appeared that you were depressed, and I myself actually have been depressed as well. And I think that it's something that we, being anarchists, tend to come across, or be, is a regular.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, actually.
It's funny, actually. Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, if you could turn your volume up just a little bit more.
My volume? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what I can do here for you.
Or just speak louder.
All right, is that working for you?
Yeah, it's much better, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, exactly what you're talking about. I had been dealing with some depression, and I've dealt off and on with depression for years. It's even being used to it, it's hard to recognize because you kind of get into that headspace, and that becomes your reality. But also, I had given myself a pretty nasty bout of seasonal affective disorder, or largely by spending 3 years living in a basement in Manhattan. You got to get that light, you got to get that vitamin E, and so while I was in sort of the deepest parts of my depression, I'd say I saw things in a much more black and white way, and I just got worked up about stuff that didn't need to be quite as worked up about.
Definitely. I would say that when it comes to being an anarchist, there are certain characteristics that you will see that you don't find in the, cheerleader, pom-pom, Bible-thumping meccas of intellectual thought.
Well, the character you don't seem to. Yeah, you don't seem to see it, but everybody does deal with mental illness. Everybody does deal with forms of depression and anxiety. However, it is more prevalent within the radical communities. And I think one of the reasons why is because you don't become an anarchist because everything is the way you like it. In order to start bumping up and realizing kind of the negative aspects of our society, like the state, you have to bump up against society. And I did that a lot of my life. Largely because, without seeming too egotistical, I'm really, really smart, and also I don't really think in the same way that a lot of people do, and that definitely causes problems. And you spoke about like cheerleaders and high school, and I do think that the American public school system in particular ends up actually building a lot of anarchists and a lot of libertarians inadvertently.
Well, at least it does something good.
Yeah.
Well, as far as my mentioning of cheerleaders, I'm not saying that they don't have their own problems or their own issues. What I'm saying is that when it comes to the normal culture that we live in, as being anarchists, we have gotten there by, as you said, bumping heads with this norm that we see, whether it's through an intellectual rigor, or whether it's through being ostracized and demonized because of physical appearance, or because of some sort of socioeconomic thing or whatever it happens to be, people who tend to go into these fringe movements tend to be more, I don't know, socially awkward in a lot of ways. And whether it's a cause and effect that goes one way or the other, the fact is that people who are in fringe movements, at least the progenitors, the people who initially start the movement or get involved in the movement when it's a small and not really gaining a huge amount of steam, tend to be socially outcast, tend to have very similar I don't know, limitations when it comes to the social congress that you would see within society, and have more, they have more time on their hands, because they're not involved with going to the keggers in the football parties and the hanging outs at dance clubs and things like that. Although I did my fair share of raving, the fact is that when you have gotten into a point where you're willing to challenge the status quo on such a high level, people in the status quo may not exactly appreciate your opinions, and it kind of pushes you to the outskirts.
Mm-hmm. And, they didn't appreciate our opinions before. One of the things that I want to stress in this is that I think a lot of people are not happy with our overall social order. I think the thing is that they don't really have much choice, and they may not have the education or the terminology.
You said terminology? Oh, you broke off there. All right, well, while we wait for Brent to come on back, keep in mind I am keeping an eye on the chat window for YouTube, and if you have a comment, please make it. I'll be happy to bring it up. Hopefully Brent will be back with us shortly. So while we're waiting on... Oh, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, I'm back. Hold on for just a sec. What happened? Did I freeze or did you freeze?
You froze.
I froze. I apologize for that. I'm going to blame Time Warner for the internet that I am forced to buy from them.
Of course, I'm a tainted perspective. It might have been me that froze instead. I just realized that I had uTorrents on, so it more than likely was me.
Okay, well, perfect.
What were you saying?
Anyway. What I was saying was, I think a lot of people are frustrated with the overall aspect of this massive hegemonized culture that we seem to live in. And one of the reasons why is I don't think that culture that we perceive really exists. There's always a differentiation between seeing a group that you're not a part of from afar, and if you ever actually make your way in and become a part of that group, you begin to see that a lot of the same problems that you had from where you were exist within that group. I mean, I think for years as an artist, I was kind of terrified about selling out and going into the normal job marketplace where I knew I'd just be miserable. But then I kind of realized there really is no selling out, largely because no one's buying, and also because people, I think, have a, I don't really want to call it idealized, but a lot of people, when they look at even the business world from the outside, or they look at it from a low position, they get an impression that I think a lot of people in positions of power and authority want them to get. But it's also kind of a scary image that inadvertently, like a big example I'll tell you is bosses. I work as a manager as one of my jobs, and the major thing is that when you get into management, I've noticed other managers doing this all the time. You act haggard. You pretend like you're working more hours than you really are when you get into conversations with the people below you. And the reason why I see managers do this, I think, is because they feel a little uncomfortable. They don't want their authority questioned. And so when this happens, they sort of get super GI. And they begin to project a front that, one, does not reflect the reality of being an effective manager, and two, does not really reflect the reality of working in the business world itself.
Well, I think that there's certainly some psychological studies that would go to support that. The Stanford, what it is, the Milgram experiment, where they had the prison guard experiment. Being in a position of authority that's unquestioned places you in a mindset that suggests that you should start to use that authority in ways to demonstrate it, to really push that issue. And I think that if you find yourself in a situation where you have people who are not only just subservient but dependent, it does kind of create that kind of a thing. If you notice, I don't know if you've ever taken a look into the history of the treatment of women in Australia, but because there was such a very high amount of death caused in the world wars for the Australian male population, the amount of women versus men in Australia was very tainted. It's a wide disparity, and so since men were so widely sought and in such low supply, the supply and demand curve basically caused the men to say, well, I'm going to command a very high price for my being around and
services.
My services, so to speak, and actually started to treat the women quite poorly. In fact, the Sheilas there were treated quite poorly for a very long period of time because of the supply and demand. And I think that the same thing happens when you come to look at people in commerce and employees and employers. When you have a very large number of employers who are vying for the same employee, the employees can be ruthless, and you can see that from, let's say.
Though I'd say it's much more the other way around, though.
Well, sure, it certainly is in our society right now. But let's say, for example, if you've got a Michael Jordan, or you've got a Tom Hanks, they can be very demanding and illustrate to their prospective employer, hey, you know what? If you don't do my bidding, if you don't have the boa constrictor and my favorite malt liquor, and I'm going to bail on you. So it's just a matter of having options limited on one side is going to give them a disadvantage. But I
think absolutely.
Keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah, what you're getting at here, and you're using the words supply and demand, and that's a part of it, but really what we're talking about is power. We're talking about a power dynamic between different people. And
I don't necessarily, I would say it's a power dynamic. I would say that it's more about options. People who have a lot more options have the ability to basically say, I'm going to walk out. And if you don't like it,
which then increases your social power. Which
it does power.
Which is why I should add that anarcho-communists and syndicalists, which is the syndicalist tradition is within anarcho-communism, why we actually press very hard for unions, and why we have the, I guess, collectivist, why we have sort of the collectivist mindset. Anarcho-communism, philosophically, and I've maintained this for a lot, because a lot of times what will happen is ANCAPs will come in and say, oh, you're not individualists, you're collectivists. One of the major reasons why I'm an anarcho-communist is that I am an individualist, and the thing is that I recognize that my individual power is increased in proportion to society when I have people around me that I can count on, that will back each other up. I think
it's the same for everybody. Everybody has the idea that the more people that you have that will come to your aid when you're in a situation that demands it, the more potential power that you have. But again, the thing really comes down to when you have options, and if you have employees who have a certain skill set that nobody else has, and those employees can say, well, we're not going to work for you, we're going to work for that guy unless you do this. If they are able to do so in a block group, through a labor union, for example, then they have a significant amount of power, and that's a great thing. It's collective bargaining at its best. That's exactly what it's for. And I don't know the ANCAPs that I talk to, the ANCAPs that I'm friends with, think that that's a great tool to create a appropriate bargaining, point for using supply and demand and voluntary negotiation. But I guess I don't really want to go on to the disagreement side as much as the agreement side.
Yeah, well, we both have moderated the ANCAP versus ANCOM debate, and I think both sides throwing mud at each other is fun for a while, but it also gets boring.
Yeah.
So I do kind of want to focus a little bit on bridge building and sort of where we can understand each other.
Exactly.
In fact, one of the things that I did want to point out between ANCAPs and ANCOMs and anybody else who tends to identify in the radical anti-authoritarian structure, even if you do not really express your ideas about your positive ideas about what society should be in the same way in capitalism or communism or mutualism, whatever. I think there is a similarity in personality in a lot of ways, in that it tends to be people who, for whatever reason, are having difficulty reconciling themselves and what they want with the status quo and are pushing back against that.
I agree. I think that when it comes to people who are thinkers, people who are not... they don't have their entire personality rolled up into the cult of personality that comes across when you're dealing with the norm society that's out there, that's spending their days and nights thinking about how to work their magic in the, I don't know, whether it's the religious realm where they're trying to, get their agenda passed, or get get together with people and have power and influence when it comes to their religious caste, or whether it comes to the people who are in the politics thing that are vying for power and manipulation of other things, or whether it's just,
or the people who are trying to become rich. Let's be serious there.
there's all the people who are just too busy screaming, "Oh my God, my team is so much better than your team."
Yeah.
It's just there are so many people who are filled up with this cult of personality that comes around by all these distractions that come about, whether it's buying shoes or supporting your favorite football team, or being the, I don't know, the best of the best when it comes to your job, for example. There are people who, they don't really stop and say, what are the real questions? What are the real things that we have to deal with? And when it comes to the people who go into anarchism, or who even go into atheism, or people who go into perhaps gay rights, or equality for different races, or feminism, or things like that, these people, they haven't been bought into. They haven't bought into the whole, living life.
Yeah.
Work through your objects, living life through your favorite team, living life through your favorite candidate, living life through your favorite deity. They're actually pursuing things that matter to them in the reality that they see, and the only reason why they can see that reality is because they haven't had their lens of vision so focused on these ridiculous things that we have, that you see people focusing on, like sports and politics and
Though what I will say, and once again, this is to kind of echo what I was talking about at the beginning of the program, it can seem like that is a giant hegemonized group in a sports stadium or whatever, but I mean, if you think of... Yeah, you think about Dunbar's number, the fact that humans overall can only see, because our brains aren't wired right, they can only see around 150 people as individual real humans, and then the rest get grouped into sort of just a broad thing where we don't really think of them as the same as us. And it's really, there's no reason not to do that. It's just that we can't because evolution built us this way. maybe, you know, in the future that number will improve as humans continue to evolve. But, you know, for the here and now, one of the major things that I have realized about communities, and this came from leaving South Central Kentucky and a very repressive college environment that I was in, and really hiking the Appalachian Trail, Maine to Georgia, and then moving to New York City. The thing is that society is not organized into giant hegemonized group, tiny little pockets of radicals all around it. What society is organized into is a massive organization filled with tiny groups of 150 people or so, 125, whatever. Those are the little scenes within society, and they overlap, and then they're knitted together by the nation state at this point, which is they have a common religion.
It could be they're knitted together by a congregation, or a sports team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, they say church and state, and sports also are a big thing about national identity, which is why emotions run so high when they happen, and people get killed at soccer riots. And governments, by the way, have been overthrown by soccer riots.
Oh, awesome! Well,
that was
something good.
It was a major problem in the Roman Republic. So I don't know if it was really soccer, but whatever. There were two. Anyway, what happens here is you're seeing an artificial construct. It's probably why Striner calls society a spook, and also called necessarily the state. And a lot of these massive superstructures that we observe, they're spooks. They're what our brain fills in because we don't have the capacity to understand them in a more detailed way. So why does this play into what I'm talking about with maybe the differences between individualist anarchism and more collectivist anarchism? What I learned on the Appalachian Trail and what I learned when I moved to New York was my entire life before that, I was in a repressive culture, whether it was in Northern Virginia or South Central Kentucky, whether it was at the all-boys boarding school I attended in college. I was bumping up against people who did not get me, did not like me, and thought I should be something else. And it really wasn't until I started putting myself out there and I disappeared into the woods for 6 months with the thru-hikers, and then moved to New York and found this underground community of artists, actors, poets, assorted radicals, that I sort of found my people. That I found a group of humans who thought closer to the way that I think and were willing to accept me on my terms. So,
you use this word radical, and it's kind of an interesting thing. I see that that sometimes the anarcho-communists will don the label radical as a badge of pride. And oftentimes it seems like I'll see anarcho-capitalists, they'll say, well, if you want to call me a radical for believing that people should, you know, blah, 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 whatever it happens to be, you know, which I totally support, we look at it as a point of sarcasm where we're like, yeah, you think that it's radical to do this? You're idiots. You don't, you know, why don't you get this? And so, I don't know, do you think that anarcho-communists tend to think of the term radical as being, yes, we're radical, and that's a good thing, but it is radical? And whereas anarcho-capitalists say, yes, we're radical, but everybody should be radical. I don't know, there's kind of like a little difference between the two. It's like, one seems to be like, I don't know, empowerment through radicalization with the anarcho-communists, and then the anarcho-capitalists are like, if you call that radical, you're a moron, kind of thing, and saying, well, it's actually normal, and you guys are just freaking stupid, so stupid you can't figure it out.
Yeah, which is not the best way to win friends and influence people, I'm just going to say.
Oh, yeah.
I think Anarcho-capitalists tend to be, yeah, you guys definitely do not seem to own the title of radical as much as anarcho-communists do. And yeah, we love it. We live in that. We love the image of a guy, wearing a bandana around his face, usually like a black and red bandana around his face, chucking a brick through a window. We love that image. Now, it doesn't mean we're actually going to chuck a brick through the window. And in fact, yeah. But it's nice to know that we could. And
yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that, a lot of times when people aren't listening to you, the way to get them to listen to you is to deliver a shock. Naomi Klein actually talked about it and the way it's been used to condition populations in a very creepy way. But also, if you get into a conversation about politics with a standard Republican or standard Democrat, what they'll do is they'll go through a script. They have seen a very specific script of arguments on the whatever mass media thing that they watch, and they don't really think for themselves. They just repeat it verbatim. And so when you're trying to talk to them and maybe make a persuasive argument about a specific issue, and you find you're bumping up against that wall, suddenly you look them in the eye and you go, you know what, property is theft. And then, bam, suddenly they have to pay attention to what you're saying, because their brain says to them, whoa, this is a new situation. I don't actually know everything that's going on here. Better step up my game. So I think ANCOMs, myself included, definitely look at the idea that we are radicals and we are asking for a massive, massive change to society to happen very, very quickly. Now, are we going to get that? I highly doubt it's possible, because we ask so high, without a massive, massive revolution and a huge loss of life. I don't think we're going to get that overnight. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't ask for it. That doesn't mean you don't fight for it. And when you do, maybe you change a few minds and you get people to think.
Yeah, when it comes to the claims that, or the demands or wants that we are seeking, whether it be an ANCOM or an ANCAP, we do kind of have to ask ourselves, are we talking to people who are physically, mentally, spiritually capable of providing such a revolution, such a change in mindset? The idea that we live in a society that has so many people. I mean, we've just got billions of people on this planet. I mean, how can we possibly influence and change the mindsets of so many? Well, obviously there are studies that have been done that if you only change 7 to 10% of the population and they're fervent in their belief systems, that they can change the minds of all the rest of them, and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, realistically, the level of change that is required to change over a society, whether it be to ANCOM or ANCAP, we're incredibly short of anything close to it.
At the moment.
So this builds into it a sense of ineptitude, a sense of lacking the ability to achieve one's goals is depressing. It is insufferable. The idea that we're living amongst these zombies who wander around day to day going brains when they're talking about, oh, I don't know, watching Survivor or the next football game, to we occasionally will run across those people who are in the mix, who are actually discussing these things, and when we get there, we're so exasperated with the lack of ability, with the futility of our efforts, that when we get into a place where we can actually have a discussion with other people of a similar vein or similar, capability to think, we get amped and exasperated and start yelling and screaming and calling other people, let's see here, saying things like, that they have a platform to spew their delusion, as was said by Autonomous Prime in the chat.
It's a great name, by the way. I love Autonomous Prime. I don't know the guy. I just like that name.
Well, I mean, the comments are, why does this commie keep getting a platform to spew his delusion? Commies are all image, no substance. The fact is that when it comes down to it, I would much rather have conversations with yourself, or even with people that I'm vehemently frustrated by because of their lack of respect for myself and my position by calling us quote and quote
Yeah.
caps. You know,
I believe I've called you guys grave robbers before. So yeah,
yeah.
it is really, honestly, it is really douchey to say that.
But we're having
And
a discussion at least, and
yeah,
that's a
we are.
great thing. You know, it'd be nice though if we could actually have the respect
Yeah.
and like, you know, just calm down those frustrations that you have with all the frickin' zombies that are out there. Relax that for a moment and realize that the person on the other side of the computer is a person who's actually taken a step towards freeing the mind and the people that we are all trying to free. Whether they have a different plan, a different idea of how it's supposed to be done, doesn't matter. I mean, you can discuss the details on that. They're awake. They're a real person. They're not a zombie. So stop being an asshole to them. At least talk to them.
That's a brilliant point, and one I've honestly been trying to make and take that advice for myself. I think a lot of the really strong disagreements that we've had have kind of come down a lot to posturing, though. And the reason why I think it is, innately when two groups like ANCOMs and ANCAPs, who are so radically different, bump into each other, what tends to happen is as they try to persuade each other or communicate, the two groups, usually what I note is ANCAPs will come in and try to be like, come over here to us and let's take down the state together, and ANCOMs will immediately be like, whoa, 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 I have no idea what you're talking about. If we do take down the state together, what are we going to put in its place? And keep in mind also, ANCOMs are a bit paranoid about who we work with. And the reason why we are more paranoid about who we work with than most other people is because ANCOMs have a long, long history of being stabbed in the back and suppressed by people that we took for our allies. It happened with the Black Army in the Ukraine when they allied with the Red Army under Trotsky. After the anarchists won the war and defeated the last remnants of the White Army, then Trotsky had every single one of us. All of our leaders were imprisoned. Nestor Makhno had to flee to France, and they were killed and suppressed and gone. Suddenly, no more anarchist Ukraine. Same thing happened in anarchist Catalonia. The Spanish Republicans and also the Soviet Union allied with the anarchists up in Catalonia to fight the fascists. And once again, the same story. Let's come together. Let's work together for a goal. And then as soon as they had the opportunity to, bam, suppressed, killed, destroyed. And then you see the same thing happen with the workers' movement here in the United States, where what we had happen was this very, very radical core of the union movement agitated and fought, and then the liberals came in, took over, stabbed us in the back, and got rid of us. And then even you go back to Occupy, and you saw the Democratic Party offered Occupy Wall Street a huge amount of money from Ben of Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream to essentially become a voting drive for the Democratic Party. And what did we do? We turned that money down. And as soon as we turned that money down, people stabbed us in the back. They took our they took our terminology and started using stuff like 99% spring, and the culture moved on and left us in the dust. Now, there were also people involved in Occupy, actually even some of the core organizers who were just all human beings who have kind of gone over to that dark Enlightenment side of things, which is just creepy and crypto-fascist. So what will happen is that ANCOMs tend to, keeping this in mind, and the primary thing I think that a lot of ANCOMs are interested in is history and historical class struggle. So with that history in mind, a group that we don't understand and doesn't really seem to have a lot in common with us is suddenly using a lot of our symbols that we've identified with, and our language, but they're not quite saying the same thing, and we think to ourselves, wait a minute, is this another Soviet Union situation? Is this another situation?
That level of intellectual rigor behind the backlash on it, or is it the fact that the terminology that's being used by anarcho-capitalists, the fact that they're using the word capitalist causes a knee-jerk response that is so visceral?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the thing. You don't need a huge intellectualized position. You don't have to sit there and think out everything that I just outlined to be an anarcho-communist and kind of jump at a capitalist when they call themselves capitalists. And yeah, that does really piss us off because we view
when we call ourselves anarchists, it pisses you off?
It pisses us off when you call yourselves anarchists
and capitalists.
We feel that that is an attempt to erase our history. And there have been actual set attempts by the state to actually physically erase our history. Most of the documents in anarchist histories from the anarchist struggle in Spain have been destroyed by the fascists after Franco won. Same thing happened there's almost no information out about the Black Army in the Ukraine because the Soviets eliminated that. So once again, another diverse group, or a group that's very different than us, comes along, uses a key word that we identify as the enemy, and then says they're the same as us, and this is what you believe, this is anarchism, we believe the same thing, right? And the ANCOMs are going to react very, very strongly to that. And you don't have to know all of that to do it. All you do is you feel it in your gut, and you're like, holy crap, here I'm staring at an inverted version of my flag.
And it responds. All right, well, let me just make sure that this is completely straight. As far as ANCAPs, listen, when it comes to historical identification of the term anarchist, it is not without rulers. Historically, the term means without a variety of different things, which includes private property ownership, which includes wage labor, which includes all these different things. That's historically what the term anarchist was talking about. Now, we may want to redefine the term and actually go back to its original type of roots as far as the etymology of it, and there's going to be a lot of backlash about that. And the fact is that, if we etymologically look at it, both of us are anarchists. It's just the way it is. But they have a point when they say, you're not real anarchists historically. We're not. We're buying into an idea that says, hey, you know what? There's a market system that laissez-faire market, free market capitalism could actually be without quote-unquote rulers, and instead be voluntary associations. Well, that's fine and dandy, but that's still allowing for things that are considered to be a hierarchical structure that is in violation of the historical definition of the term anarchist. So literally, yeah, we're anarchists. Historically, we're not. Mm-hmm. Get over it.
Well, okay. To be fair on that one also, I'll talk to the ANCOMs, and I'm going to say to the ANCOMs, guys, seriously, ANCAPs are not the capitalists that you are angry at. And they are not the capitalist, they're not even a part of the capitalist class from the way we look at things. Nor do they really seem to want to become these massive heads of industry and giant CEOs. A lot of these guys are ones that just want to run their own business and want that to be a little bit easier for them. And you really can't fault them for that because, I mean, look at the society that we're in. I know that I do not do well with getting into work on time. I do not like to wear ties. I do not like to do things in rote procedure. It drives me crazy. It doesn't work with my personality. And I also have attention deficit disorder, which causes a lot of issues with the standard wage labor stuff. So we get together and we try to find alternative ways to do that outside the capitalist system. And we also, look and hope for some sort of revolution that will make it so we don't have to deal with this. The ANCAPs essentially are trying to get into a position where they do have their own autonomy. It very much is sort of the Jeffersonian ideal or even the mutualist ideal, which is probably why a lot of ANCAPs will say, or I'm sorry, ANCOMs will say to ANCAPs, you're not really ANCAPs, you're mutualists. So I think a lot of the time what happens is there's miscommunication, and then there's also very much a lack of listening to the other person, largely because I think we've both worked so hard at defending our positions and articulating it that we become extremely dogmatic. And interestingly enough, that's probably one of the most un-anarchist.
Well, certainly being disrespectful and not willing to listen, not willing to engage, is something that you will see in a fairly regular case by people who are anarchists. And the same thing is true when it comes to people who are, atheists. You'll find that when they try to engage a person who is religious, who's willing to actually have a discussion, who has maybe doubts even, their level of ability to communicate, and oh, I'm just so frustrated, I don't know what the hell to say. They kind of like their tongue gets tied, their sweat goes up, their blood pressure rises, they get all angst-ridden because I have a platform. Just scream.
Yeah. You'll see similar things in OWS-style GAs, especially with people that don't have a background in working in them. One of the big problems, actually, with that was that people would use the General Assembly not to make policy or to really draw attention to a very specific issue that needed to be dealt with. They would use it as a platform, because suddenly people are listening to what they have to say, and what ends up happening is things just get very, very difficult to move forward, because really what this person needed was not so much a GA as they needed a stage, and they needed to find an open mic where they could talk about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I suggested that to Occupy. They did not do it, and I was annoyed, but I started my own later.
Yeah. Well, in England they have this platform where you go up and stand on it, and there's this gigantic open square where people come around and listen, or they can just go wander off. And anybody is invited to go ahead and stand on that platform and give their speech, and anybody's allowed to shout down whatever the hell they want, and they have this open platform. And the personal involvement that occurs there is certainly changes the tone and dialect. But when it comes to using the internet to communicate, when it comes to using Facebook and to this potentially anonymous, potentially no consequences outlet that occurs in that environment, the gloves come off and people start acting as harshly as possible when it comes to something that is so different from what they understand. And so Kurt Cobain in the chat comments says that Brent is so much less of a douche outside of Facebook. Well, yeah, you really are.
No, I am. I'm way less.
You do. You go off and I do it myself. I act like a complete asshole when it comes to Facebook sometimes. And the fact is that when it is the internet and you're communicating without the face-to-face type of thing that we're having now, being able to wear this cloak of invisibility gives you the ability to be far more aggressive. I mean, theoretically, if you were in some sort of fight, you could take far more risks if you're invisible. So why not have it be?
Well, and not just that.
Dialect.
Yeah. Well, and not just that. The thing is that I think even more than you being anonymous is the fact that you're not actually seeing the person in front of you. They're not a real person to you.
Oh, that they're
just like with.
Yeah, the fact that they're just some amorphous blob of text on the screen makes it far more easy to destroy them. When it comes to the steps to tyranny, there was a BBC documentary on this. one of the critical elements is dehumanizing the other. If you can dehumanize the other, if you can look at them as just some, I don't know, babbling idiot who's texting crap on Facebook, why not be as abusive as possible? Because, you know, they're just like a bear that's invaded your camp. You need to throw the torch at them.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is I was actually talking about this. We were questioned again about one of the policies on the ANCAP versus ANCOM debate, which was eliminating sexist, racist, ableist, and trans homophobic slurs from the forum itself. And what I kind of got into is the reason we do it isn't to be like nicer to people. I mean, it is, you should be nice because that's only polite. The reason we do it, and the reason I'm so big about enforcing it, is that when you dehumanize another person, it becomes much easier to abuse them.
Oh, but see, wait, you are not being totally honest. You are leaving out a very critical element to that.
Yeah.
So why don't you come clean here? It's not just about dehumanizing the other and becoming abusive towards them, because by golly gee, I guarantee you, if there were people using honky and cracker and whatever other pejorative towards, let's say, emasculation of men, you know what? If it comes to bashing white men, you're all for it. Seems like.
Oh yeah, no, we suck. We are terrible. We really should not be running things.
There you go.
But here's the
bash men.
Yeah. Hash kill all men. Here's the thing, and this is the reason why it doesn't apply to white men. And the reason why is that
because we're privileged.
Yeah. Well, we appear privileged. Stereotypically, we look like an approximation of the people who are in control of our society.
Just a question. Quick question.
Yeah.
Number of suicides per capita by gender and race.
I'm going to guess men probably commit suicide more often.
And then which race has the highest level of suicide in men?
In men? I think the last I read it was actually Native Americans. They actually experienced growing up, PTSD sort of like on the level of soldiers.
What's next?
Probably black men?
No, it's white.
Oh, white men. Oh, right. Black men are getting killed by cops.
And each other.
Yeah. More cops, but yeah. Here's the deal.
More by cops, actually.
Cops
killed more people than, I don't know. If Hitler could possibly have thought of the long term, he would have implemented what the United States and other capitalist, quote-unquote capitalist societies have implemented.
Yeah. Well, Hitler. It's interesting, actually, with Hitler. There's been some reading on him, and a lot of what people viewed Hitler as is like if Lyndon LaRouche suddenly out of nowhere got a huge 30% of a vote for whatever reason, and then took over the United States, and all of even the normal people were looking at me like, how did that guy get in there? Are we really? Oh, okay. I guess we're doing this. And in fact, our movies like to portray all of Germany as being brainwashed, when really if you talk to people from that period, there was a woman who I forget her name, but she wrote a book and she talked about she was a German in Germany when the bombs started falling on Berlin, and the Soviets were coming in, and they kind of looked at it and they're like, it had to happen. We actually kind of deserve this. But to get back to the previous point about it being a little easier to insult and come up with slurs and silly terms for the ruling class and those who stereotypically resemble them, these do not have institutional power behind them. A good example, I am not viewed as a criminal when I walk into a store. I am not, because I'm a straight guy, I'm not viewed as being a homosexual, and thus I am it's much harder for anyone to dehumanize me. Like, so my like level of human is way up here.
But you got all sorts of armor that's on you because you're a white male, non-homosexual, and then you can bear the bullets that are going to be hurled at you by the assholes that are of this world, and so. All right,
yeah,
well,
absolutely.
A few bullet slinging is fine. It's all good, and then, you know what? Bullshit. I call bullshit on that. There are more weak, near death white men in our society per capita, in my opinion, than there are any other culture.
I would have to see the statistics on that, but there's a lot of reasons why that could be happening.
I mean, I will grant you the exception of the and this is actually potentially lacking data of the new timeline, because since we've had the introduction of the economic growth that has happened with the Indian casinos, maybe it's not the same, but at one point it was definitely Native American men who were really just suffering.
No, they still are. Yeah, the casinos helped, but I don't really think that.
But the point that I'm making, I mean, well, let's just grant that there's this marginalized group, and quite frankly, I would say that if you're a Native American and you're watching this program, you need to tell your leaders, we should tell every single government institution on this planet to fuck off, and if they don't like it, you're going to bulldoze their roads. And they can just have
I'm gonna warn you on that, though. Yeah, Robert, just keep in mind you're prescribing action for Native American men who you're not a Native American man. You haven't been to the reservations.
I'm just saying if they could frickin' just take control of their lives, and they have license, as far as I'm concerned. Their nation exists in this nation of the United States, and they should do whatever the fuck they want with their quote-unquote nation. I don't believe in nations per se, but quite frankly, stop bowing down to the white oppressor. He's a bullshit con artist, so he's going to lie to you and cheat from you and steal from you over and over again, so fuck him, take what's yours. But, let's, moving...
That's very Malcolm X of you. I actually agree with that. But once again, we do have to be very, very careful with that. This is actually another reason why it has been difficult for ANCOMs and ANCAPs to kind of come together on anything, is usually because anarcho-communists, especially modern anarcho-communists, have realized that under our own power, by ourselves, we are not going to be able to get what we want. Even the most privileged, the whitest of the white men ANCOMs are not going to be able to affect the political change just with themselves and white men. If you want to be effective, you need to be inclusive. And to be inclusive, you need to respect other people. You need to respect other people's cultures and their ways of seeing things.
I mean, look, the thing that I really wanted to put into your mind, which is critical. You're a white man.
Yeah.
You've got all this privilege.
Yep.
And
it's freaking awesome.
Your life was basically like destroyed. Completely, almost ineffectual because of the depression that you experienced.
I was pretty effectual, actually. I was doing very, very well, and I knew I was doing very, very well. The problem was I was also not happy, and that's when I kind of looked at my life and was like, "Holy crap!" Objectively, I can tell everything is coming up Milhouse. But I still feel like I did 5 years ago when I was living paycheck to paycheck, not sure if I'd be able to make rent the next month. And that's when I realized, oh crap, I'm very depressed. And if one of the reasons why I'm very depressed, once again, is that I lived in a basement apartment for 3 years, got no sunlight, massive vitamin D deficiency. Which, interestingly enough, I'm going to point this out, the reason I lived in that basement apartment was that I can't afford anything else. I can afford it now, but I couldn't previously.
You could afford all sorts of cool shit if you lived somewhere else, but you chose to live there. But
Yeah, I did. But also, keep in mind, so think about this. Mental illness and problems develop as a result of poverty. They develop as a result of
poverty?
in an underground
Does
apartment.
it
They
does it
develop as
does
a
it develop
result
as a
of
result
having
of
to work
poverty?
long
Oh,
hours.
wait. I want to get you on this point. Does it develop as a result of poverty, or
It
does it?
develop, yeah. Because poverty
Okay.
is a major stressor.
Okay. Now, when you say poverty, are you saying a disparity in wealth, or are you just saying a level of wealth?
Poverty, by definition, is a disparity.
You broke up.
Yeah, poverty, by definition, is a disparity in wealth.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, a lot of this is here's the deal. A lot of ANCAPs kind of sort of subscribe to the idea that we can all be equally rich if we just implement the right market system. The problem with that is, no, you really can't. You can have a lot of stuff. We could all have equally, extravagant lifestyles. But if we were all equally rich, no one would be rich. Because what comes along with being a wealthy millionaire or a wealthy billionaire is the ability to command the labor and respect of other people much more easily than they can do it for you. Imagine if we were all billionaires and you needed somebody to come over and unclog your toilet. How much are you going to have to pay Michael Bloomberg to unclog your toilet? For his time, he's a billionaire. Or how much are you going to have to pay Bill Gates to come over and reshingle your roof or be a waiter at your next function?
I don't know, but here's an interesting fact. I make approximately, I don't know, say 40. Let's say I make approximately $40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's a clear, it's a clear overestimation. Actually, I make about 20% less than that. All right, and then you take the government bite, which is another 20%.
Yes, though you don't. If you write it off right, you don't pay any income tax at that tax level.
Yeah, I do. I pay taxes on groceries. I pay taxes on.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry, income tax.
Okay.
Usually, when politicians complain about taxes and they talk about lowering tax rates, what they're talking specifically about is income tax, not like sales tax or any of those others.
Realistically, let's say after taxes, after everything is all spent and said and done, my spendable buying power,
Mm-hmm.
not dollars, just buying power. Buying power, I can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. I can afford all the alcohol that I want, all the cigarettes that I want, and all the high-speed streaming Twitch TV that I want.
Right.
I can do all these occasional trips to Colorado to have a good time, or to Vegas or whatever. And when it comes to, I don't know, let's say I go out to someplace and I tip. Well, the person that I'm tipping ends up being able to make the same or more that I'm making because of my dollar tip for them bringing me a drink and a burger.
Right.
So, yeah, the time that is necessary to actually go through and plumb or fix a shingle or whatever it happens to be that I need to be done with my home, if I'm going to have Michael Bloomberg come over and do it, well, if he has the volume and he has the efficiency, he can be doing it in the same way.
Yeah, but he's not going to do that because who wants to unclog a toilet?
Right. Well, if who wants to unclog a toilet, it comes down to, well, I take this blob of goo and I throw it into the
yeah.
Then
why don't you just do it?
And I press this button on my remote control, and it goes, and it's done. And he pulls the blob of goo out, and he has to wash his hand. Boo frickin' who? He's done. It's over. And the amount of money that he makes by doing volume, the thing is that the technological barrier for these different trades, these different things.
Yeah, but really, what we're talking about. Yeah, what we're talking about though is an abstract. I mean, that's really what money is. It's movable debt. So
It's
when you're dealing with that,
whoa, money's movable debt?
yeah,
No,
yeah,
okay.
in a lot of ways, it's a
No,
store of value, but
money is not movable debt. Money is movable proceeds.
it's the same thing. I
It
mean,
is the same thing, but the
here's
way you perceive it is entirely, it changes your perspective drastically. If you actually perceive that the fact is that money, I don't know, you're going to have to respond
yeah.
to that. I got to shut this thing
No,
off.
yeah, no, it's fine. Look, here's the deal. What I'm saying is that what we do with money, what we're doing is we're keeping track of social favors and how to exchange various favors with each other. What that comes down to is human relationships. Those are the only people we're exchanging money with. It's other humans. So what we're doing is a lot of times people think if we go out and we just mine all this gold, suddenly all of the favors that the wealthy have now, if we have similar money to them, we'll be able to compel those favors as well. No, you won't. Because once again, it is your ability to command human favors relative to other humans, which is why no matter how many resources we extract,
No. We don't really care whether it's other. We don't care whether it's other humans that provide it or not. We really don't.
No, yeah, but it doesn't matter. And yet we do actually care.
No,
I mean,
we don't.
once again,
No.
think about luxuries. Think about fine dining. It is important to have a person in a subservient position to come and bring you things so you feel like you're a big man.
We're getting completely off the freaking topic. What we should be discussing. And look, yes. Yeah. Do I think that it's important to be able to have another person give me their input on how to, I don't know, manage my banking? Right. Can I go to an ATM and actually do it? Sure. It's easy. It's done. Fine. You know, we get over it at a certain point in time, and it's a nicety. It's a nicety that makes us feel important. But it's all about perspective, about what it is that people want. People want stuff. People want experience. They don't want other people to be subservient to them. Only
some people do.
Only in so much as it's an experience that they enjoy. And if it's about changing the diet, you know, the way in which people think about society, the way that people think about other people, you could do that in a communist or a capitalist society. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you could. And you know, in a communist society, even though it is classless and moneyless, there probably would be some ways for some humans to lord it over others. It's sort of what we do, but there are healthier ways to express it than the way we're doing it right now.
It's what everybody does. That's just the way that human beings are. Is that we like to lord ourselves over the other people. Look,
not always. It's one aspect of what we are.
Okay, the fact is, though, that you could change that in either dialectic. You could change that whether it be communist or capitalist. That whole thing can change. And the idea that capitalism, you know, requires that one be a lord over another is, no, it's crap. Capitalism is about the fact that I made it, it's mine.
Yeah, and then if you made enough, you get to lord it over other people, like keeping up with your neighbors.
That's an aside.
How many neighbors in the suburbs go out and buy these big
making an argument there, or
just to show people off?
A correlative statement. You're making a correlative statement. That's all it is. It's just like me saying, you know what, communism. How is it that you could have communism without having all the poverty and death that occurred in the USSR or in the China, or the North Korean,
Well, you build it. Yeah, you build it statelessly. That's.
Yeah, obviously we can say that there's this claim that every single thing that occurs, this communism is going to, result in massive death and destruction, and everything that occurs in capitalist society is going to result in exploitation. This is all
and death and destruction.
Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all crap. Look. Which system actually achieves more economic growth? I would say capitalism. You would say communism? Perhaps you would disagree.
No. Actually, I would say capitalism achieves more economic growth.
All right.
And
Well, great.
so would Lenin.
Okay, well, that's great. But, which encourages more exploitation? Perhaps you would say capitalism, and I would say communism. All right, well, maybe you're right. Maybe it's exploitation occurs more in capitalism. The point is that if there is an exploitative situation where you've got, I don't know, name a super rich Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey has to choose to subjugate herself to Donald Trump to get what she wants. She is exploited by Donald Trump to. Oh, actually, I should say the recently deceased bitch who won The Apprentice, whatever the hell it was.
Whoa. Please don't call whoever it was a bitch.
No, she was a bitch. She was.
Yeah, but there's other ways to say
Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was a horrible, horrible person.
I don't know her, but she may have been. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know her.
I won't call her a bitch. I'll call her a horrible person.
Okay, there you
go. She's a horrible, manipulative, lying.
Why are you pointing this at women, though? I mean, there are plenty of other people to pick.
Wrong word choice. Fine. She was a bad. She was a dick.
Yeah. Well, but let's also face it. Donald Trump is also a horrible.
Oh, he's
person.
a dick.
So So there's a lot of people out there we don't like.
We can use pejoratives as long as they're referring to male anatomy and not female anatomy. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Whatever it happens to be. Look, she had to subjugate herself to the Trump in order to get her daughter to win the Apprentice thing, in order to unrightfully seize it from somebody who had actually won the damn thing, who the only reason she didn't is because she was a poker player, because she didn't have the strings to pull or whatever, or she wasn't willing to, bow down to the Trump.
But
look, bottom line is that Joan Rivers was still super frickin' rich, and she was still super frickin' influential. And if she had to subjugate herself, okay, yeah, she was exploited. She was exploited insofar that in order to get the uber super cool thing that she wanted, she had to sacrifice the uber super cool thing she already had.
Yeah.
Who cares? If we're all sacrificing in order to appease the oppressor, and all we're sacrificing is, oh my God, we're all super fucking rich, who cares?
Yeah, but here's the deal. If you subjugate yourself to another person, you're not really going to get what you want. You might, and I've seen this time and time again, when people when people sign on to someone else's team because they want to extract from the relationship, what ends up happening is that the person they're trying to extract from still ends up owning them, even when they're super freaking rich.
Owning them? Are you serious?
Yeah, I think absolutely. If you depend on a relationship for continued security, that person's got you over a barrel.
Okay. But when you say security, what are you talking about? Because you're saying security like as if it's actually like a final end-all be-all. Security in what? Security in that I own 5,000 properties around the world and can have the...
Yeah, in getting what you want, whatever what you want is.
Oh, so everybody should have what they want?
But people can't all have what they want because as creatures, I assume evolution. We are not set to get something and stop. As soon as we get what we want, the want moves and changes. Yeah, or we want something else. So what ends up happening a lot of the time is people get this idea that if they appease those in authority, if they just humble themselves enough, they're going to eventually get to a point where they no longer have to do that. That's not going to happen. because you can't respect someone who licks your boots, and you don't trust someone who does that, especially if you're rich and in a position of power. Honestly, I've gotten further with the upper class, going up and telling them straight out I'm a communist, than many capitalists get, bowing down and being like, how can I help you? What can I do, Mr. Donald Trump? And it's because sort of at the other end of the spectrum, the person says, at least this person is honest, and they're not trying to bullshit me. So I think in a lot of ways what we run into is that capitalists think that, or anarcho-capitalists think that they can somehow woo the ruling class. They can, if they pull the cart really, really well, the man with the carrot's going to let them have that
way
carrot.
off topic. We're going way off topic. I'm sorry that I didn't
That's
this. I didn't stop this earlier. Look, we'll have to have that discussion at another point.
Yeah, it's a good discussion.
All right, I want to bring something to the table that we've kind of been skirting around, and I think that it's important. I was listening to the show. It's a podcast. It's called The Thinking Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good podcast. I think that Seth Andrews is just an amazing podcaster. If you've not heard it, you should probably listen to it. The Thinking Atheist is without a doubt one of my favorites. But on this particular podcast, he had a person on who was talking about fringe groups. Mm-hmm. Talking about atheists and how their ability to debate when it comes to Facebook and other things tend to get hyperbolic, tend to become marginalized because of their hostility and their intentionally being obtuse.
Yep.
And she said that actually it's not a new phenomenon. It's been known for a very long time. This is a phenomenon that occurs in all revolutionary thought. That the feminist group, when it started, had bra burning and had...
That actually never happened.
Well,
it was an urban legend.
Right. Well, the idea of it, the thought process that goes behind it, is that
we're special people and we get to lord it over other
we're pushy people, and whether it was Malcolm X or whether it was actually the Black Panthers would potentially be a little bit more of an extreme perspective. Yeah. And
by the way, I'm 100% behind the Black Panthers, not the new Black Panthers, but the actual Black Panther Party.
Yeah. Well, in the homosexual movement, where it comes to dressing up and having parades, wearing the most obtuse clothing.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to shock people, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the shock value and so on. These things occur in all these different movements. In fact, even in the abolitionist movement, there were actors who were acting in a way that was, if you were a socially apt person, who was somebody who was capable of manipulating and changing minds and was really good in the marketing of an idea, would say, don't do that, that's a bad idea. But these people did it. So it's the nature of these movements that you're going to attract the initial people who are going to be attracted to these movements are people who have not had their lenses filled with the pop culture, who are out and available to think about, rogue thought processes, who are not bought into the norm and are seeking the abnorm. And so because they're fringe to begin with, they're fringe, not, I don't know which comes first or the other. As a nature for the initial progenitors of a group, you're going to find that there are going to be people who are socially inept. And I don't know, you would see that true of some of the initial writings that you would see from, from the ANCAP movement. You would see stuff that was written which included crazy thoughts like, well, if you didn't want to take care of your child after you had it, you could just go ahead and kill it. Rothbard. I think it was Rothbard.
Let it die.
Yeah, let it die.
Yeah, that was Rothbard.
I mean, the lack of forethought on it
Yeah.
was fairly limited, and I would say that the same thing is true when it comes to, I don't know whether it was Prudhomme or
You're talking
anyone
about
else.
property as theft?
Property is theft, and then he
Prudhomme.
later on says property is life, and I mean,
Property, yeah, it's property is theft, property is liberty, and property is impossible.
yeah, all these fringe stupid things that people say, and
It's trying to get attention.
what's her name? Oh.
I think I know what you're getting at here, and you're saying that by doing this, what happens is that these minority and revolutionary groups and thinkers marginalize themselves, and they make it difficult for other people to
marginalized because of their lack of social skill. Because if they had social skill, they would have been in part of society. They would have just found their niche. They would have found their clique, jumped in, and gone with it.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, it's not always like I have a lot of social skill. Like I'm really, really crazy good at it. But I still ran into huge problems growing up, largely because of the way that I thought and sort of the values that I had. So it's not so much that people have less social skill. There are people that are having problems and trying to figure it out.
If you look at the group of people that you know that are coming from the anarcho-communist movement. Actually, let's make it super easy. Why don't you go ahead and give us just a grand overall arching viewpoint about how it is that the communicative skills, the ability to communicate ideas and philosophy, have come off from the anarcho-capitalists who have invaded your space.
I only caught about half of that. Who invaded my space?
I would like for you to describe and be detailed about the skills and intellectual rigor, the ability to persuade, the social skills that are necessary to persuade that you saw from people who were anarcho-capitalists who are invading the anarcho-communist world.
Oh, yeah, very low. Oh my lord. You know what? This is what I'll say. There were a lot of people that were going out and appeared to online have very little social skill and very limited ability to persuade, and we still see that. But honestly, that's not entirely an accurate picture of how they are in real life, because the internet changes things, and also because what we've got people who are not communicating. Humans communicate in very different ways, and different personalities will respond to different things. It has to do with our like Myers-Briggs personality type, and it also has to do with our learning type. I'm primarily kinesthetic. So what'll happen is that I will not always be able to communicate well with someone who's primarily visual, for instance, because maybe I don't use the right body language when it goes. So I think it's not just a case of one group being really dumb and one group being really smart. It's that you've got two groups that are not quite able to communicate because they aren't
But it's not about
using
being
the
dumb
right
or being
things.
smart. It's about social skills necessary to persuade.
Yeah.
And when it comes to social skills necessary to persuade, I mean, I'll give you an example of my history. I was in high school. I'm a social outcast. I'm believed to be gay, but not. I am told that I must be gay, but I'm not. I'm an affront to the big jock type who says that he's my superior when I know he's not. And so he pushes back at me and threatens to hurt me physically, and I take advantage of the opportunities presented to me to make it so that he couldn't, and he gets frustrated by it. My arrogance about the fact that I'm able to do this to the big oaf that's trying to hurt me puts me in a position of superiority in my mind, which causes others to look at me with this, oh, the guy thinks he's superior. Well, It's just the nature of the beast. If you are superior because of your own proof, and then you don't, I don't know, you're not able to keep it in its own limited form.
Yeah. Well,
keep it over there, then other people perceive it. And so when it comes off as, let's say, for example, we're dealing with an ANCAP, at least in my experience with ANCAPs, you've probably heard, I don't know, Daniel Rothschild or Michael Shanklin.
Oh God, Michael Shanklin.
You know, they'll come into an argument with an air of superiority, with a position of strength, which they deservedly have earned because they've been talking to complete lackluster arguments that have had nothing to do with any argument really whatsoever, and blown them away because these guys do have good arguments. They have the ability to show statists as being completely moronic. Okay? And they come into another environment where there might be a little bit higher level of intellectual rigor, and they try to pull the same crap.
They get their ass kicked.
Well, they don't necessarily get their ass kicked. They get disdained and shunned and not even discussed with, because look, you're not even engaging us with a level of respect. You're coming at us with this level of disdain. Why did you come in here with this arrogant attitude? We don't want to deal with an arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
It's a lack of social skill.
Okay, I'll give you that. But, you know, here's the deal. I had a lot of social problems growing up, specifically high school, college, middle school, whatever. And one of the ways that I actually developed my social skills was actually online, like being a dick on the internet. So a lot of the time, sometimes these kinds of things can be people reaching out and trying to learn how to communicate. I really don't think that there are superior people and inferior people. There are people that are good at certain things and people that are good in other areas.
You're a liar.
You say what?
You're a liar. You know that there are people who are better than others. Look, if you have a person who has been, I don't know, diagnosed to know what the fuck they're doing and still chooses to be a dick. You have a guy who knows what he's doing. He's not a he's not a psychotic. He's not, mentally,
Yeah.
Whatever.
You got someone that's cognizant.
Yeah,
you've got someone that's competent in a context, and you got someone that's
incompetent. You got a cognizant person, and he decides that he still wants to be a pedophile. He's obviously not inferior to a person who isn't.
Well, being a pedophile isn't really a choice, from what I understand. But
I'm saying,
I guess
a person who is cognizant and culpable.
Yeah. So someone's being a dick for whatever reason.
That doesn't make them.
They're being an asshole. They're causing problems. No, not really. And this is why. Let me explain. Because I did actually used to think exactly like you think right now. And like I was a libertarian in college, and around very similar lines. What I learned actually was something that was sort of drilled into me when I was living on the Appalachian Trail. People will present themselves to you in a certain context. Certain things are happening to them, and there's a lot about them that you don't know. So you can judge someone very, very quickly as inferior or incompetent or morally deficient, however you want to put it. But I have found that when you give people a chance, and when they're because I was forced to hike with these people around me who I initially disliked every single one of them, you realize there's a lot of really good, really, really competent people out there, and we miss a lot of that.
Yeah, well, I think people as a general rule are good, on my estimation. Mm-hmm. People as a general rule are semi-competent, as my estimation, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people who are amazing, who are impressive, who are higher level, whether it be, I don't know.
Well, they're higher level at certain things.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I'm
They
incredibly
might have
good at
their skill, and if it comes down to, whether it be the artists that are able to perform on the level that Rush or Pink Floyd are able to perform, versus the artistry that is performed by somebody like Nicki Minaj or whatever the hell. I don't know if she's an artist. I don't even know if she's a musician, but you can.
Yeah, but the thing is that pop music. Yeah, as much as I hate pop music, though, honestly, there is an incredible amount of skill that goes into it. I still don't like it.
It's not lacking skill. It's certainly not on par with the skill that I'm talking about, though. But okay, we have.
Yeah, but you're talking about that skill because you value it. Not everybody shares.
Everybody has their
your
own
values
system.
or my values.
Everybody has their own value system, and I can have my hierarchy. Of those people that I think that are better than others, and there are certainly a lot of people in my life and in existence who have been better than others. I would say that, Benjamin Franklin, way up there when it comes to being a great man, and I don't know, Mother Teresa.
Probably a rapist.
Mother Teresa, way down there when it comes to the ranking of the value of a person who's actually done some good. This.
Yeah, though keep in mind, you're thinking Mother Teresa way down there. Yeah, you're thinking of Mother Teresa way down there because you saw Penn and Teller and because you read Christopher Hitchens' book. You didn't actually meet Mother Teresa. Not that you could have.
But we still know that she was a complete, not a bad word that disparages.
Yeah, but that's one. Yeah. That's one version of the story that you got from three people. Similarly, now the Catholic Church goes out and says she's this saint, this perfect being. That's also bullshit. That was another thing that I learned during Occupy. I mean, you really would not believe the disparity between what was reported in the press about Occupy, and I'm talking all press, and what actually went on at Occupy. When somebody gets a hold of someone as a personality, or when they get a hold of some major event, every time they come in there, they're going to put their own spin on it. That's why George Orwell, at the end of Homage to Catalonia, one of the last things he does is warn you not to take him at face value and not to entirely trust him, and to in fact doubt what he has for his partisanship and his mistaken fact.
So does
everybody else.
So does Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh says always challenge everything that I've said.
Yeah, but Rush.
So let's just go ahead and give credit where credit's due, right?
I'll give credit. Rush Limbaugh is a very effective entertainer. He is nothing more than an entertainer.
Nothing more than an entertainer.
Yeah. And the same would go for really all pundits, myself included, when I run in those circles. Debate in the sense of like the debates you see on TV, it really doesn't have much to do with command of the subject or knowledge about, or even being smart. What you're seeing is performance art. You are watching
talking points and its key phrases, and that's one of the things that I have a big problem with when it comes to the discussions. I think that we need to kind of like wrap it up and go back to the original point of what we were talking about, which is the psychology of being an anarchist. And one of the things that I think that is critical is that anarchists are nothing more than human beings. Human beings suffer from a variety of maladies, and if you have any sort of feelings of doubt of self-worth, if you have any feelings of inadequacy or feelings that you're inept in your abilities to persuade others, which is an easy thing to have happen being an anarchist trying to persuade people who are so bought into a system that abuses them. You're trying to persuade people who are suffering from the battered wife syndrome, from every person who works for the government to every person who is a subject of the government in the prisons and so on. And they're not going to hear you very well, and that's fine. You need to take care of your physical health. You need to take care of your physical well-being, and you need to take care of your mental well-being. And that means that you have to take care of the physical requirements that are required, that take care of what it is that make you normally capable. This means that you have the right amount of vitamin D. It means that you have the right amount of endorphins. It means that you have the right amount of all these different chemicals that are going on in your head. And being an anarchist means that you have the penchant for pushing things where you're not going to get your way. So take those steps. Take the time that is necessary to give yourself the vitamin D. Buy a sunbed. Buy the things that are necessary to achieve those.
Go to a doctor.
Yeah, go to a doctor. If they prescribe Zoloft or whatever the frick it is, you might take it for a while. See if you can find holistic solutions if you can. I'm not big on the drug thing, but they did help.
Yeah.
In my case. Did they help in your case?
Oh my God, so much, yes. Wellbutrin has been amazing for me. But other drugs haven't worked as well. We're all unique.
Yeah, we all have our intrinsic values and our own chemical balances and things like that. Bottom line is that if you are going to be a person who is going to speak for liberty, whether it be an anarcho-communist or anarcho-capitalist, doesn't matter. You can't communicate if you're not a whole being and capable of spreading your message and being able to do it with a confident self.
Absolutely.
You need a confident self in order to perform adequately to achieve your ends. So stop pussyfooting, stop whining, stop griping.
Yeah,
that word in my head.
Yeah.
I just dropped it. Okay. Stop whining about what it is that you think could happen, and actually make sure that you take care of the basics, the fundamentals about what it is that you need. You need to be a strong person. Get the things that you need to make it happen, whether it be psychological help, talking to a person, seeking assistance from a psychologist, seeking it from a psychiatrist, getting the prescriptions that you need in order to be a whole person that can communicate effectively.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that, specifically to the ANCOMs and assorted leftist activists, there was a news story that came out a while ago about the government classifying radicalism as a mental illness and treating it. And a lot of leftists honestly freaked out about that, and for good reason. But I did want to point this out as well. There really is a flip side to that. And the fact of the matter is that oftentimes when we're deep in depression or anxiety, our views will get warped and things will seem much, much worse than they really are. So honestly, if you're going to be an effective radical and you're going to be an effective voice of change, take care of yourself, clean your house, and I mean that both physically and literally. But yeah,
Absolutely.
Take care of what you got to do. And because so many times people on the left will focus so much on the rest of society and the big picture that they will forget the basics, and they will forget to be kind to themselves and others.
And when it comes to being kind with others, take special exception for those who actually are awake. There are a lot of zombies out there, and we can't communicate with them. But we have others who are at least questioning the basics. And if you're not willing to engage them with a polite and courteous response, you are missing an opportunity. This is the Anarchist Experience. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Solidarity.